Okay, here we go. Okay, we're live according to Google. Here we are, we're live again. And can we get this to work this time? It looks like we're getting this to work. Okay, cool. Alright, let's just wait for someone to turn up. So far there's no one watching. Do. Here we are looking at nobody. Well, anyway, the video is being recorded and it's going to be archived anyway, so I'll talk to myself. Hi, myself. Anyway, it's a live stream. I'm going to be looking at Ableton Live. We're going to be going through how I set up my recordings, you know, to do my tracks. I'm going to go through a track that I finished recording recently, and I'm going to show how it was done from start to finish. So yeah, hopefully it'll be something that you'll enjoy. Anyway, let's wait for some people to turn up. In the meantime, we can play some music, I guess. Just put some music on and to remind me to turn it off. Zero people watching still when we've been going for 2 minutes. Do. Okay, here we go. We've got somebody joining us. Hooray! Hi. Just started the live stream a couple of minutes ago, and we're going to be doing a little bit on Ableton Live production. I've actually got a song that I've finished recently in here, and I'm going to take you through it. So please let me know if you can hear me okay, and say hi in the chat. I've got the chat running, so we can chat that way. I can answer questions as we go. Good morning or good afternoon or even good evening to you from Australia, which is where I am. It's actually quite late at night here. It's about 10:15 at night here. And yeah, welcome to the stream. At the moment you're the sole person watching, so I hope you feel special. So over here we've got Ableton Live running, and I'm going to be switching between this is the session view, and I'm also going to be looking at the arranger view as well, which is this view here. So but first what we'll do is we'll go through each one of these tracks and talk about how they're set up and answer questions and all that sort of cool stuff. And basically I'll work through my workflow on how it is that I set up the tracks and any ideas that I've got as I come along. So basically what I like to do first is I like to set up all my inputs, and these will be corresponding to, you know, hardware instruments that I've got connected to my mixer or my audio interface. In this case it's actually a Presonus Studio Live mixer, and Sometimes I'll run drum rack, or I'll run MIDI, VSTs, things like that in here anyway. So, but in this case, I actually had the Novation Peak connected. I had the Korg Radius connected. A Roland TR8 was also connected, and we did some sampling. I used the drum track, and I also did some sampling here. I also had an SH01A, which is a boutique from Roland, the System 8, which is a big keyboard synthesizer, and the Strike Fet, which is made by Waldorf, and also the System 1, which is another Roland synthesizer. And then I had a whole bunch of audio clips that I've recorded and pasted in here, and that's what these tracks are for here. So what I like to do is I like to organize my tracks in clips. And what a clip basically is, if you've never used them before, it's just a little recording. So let's double click on this clip here, and so you can see it. So this is a recording that I've made from the Novation Peak, and you can see the recording goes out further than what I've allowed for. And this clip itself is going to be a loop. So I've set it up as a loop here. You can see that loop is signified, and if I hit the play on it, you will hear what it sounds like. Now let's turn that mode off, and we'll go back to what we'll do is we'll just solo that channel there so we can only hear it. And that should loop in a sec. There it goes. Okay, so that's the sample, and what I've got is I've actually, if you go to the track itself, you'll see there's no audio effects at all on that track. It's literally recorded with that little delay effect from the actual synthesizer itself. So that's how that one was done. And we've got pretty much this clip below it is just a copy, so there's no difference there. The Radius is made by Korg. It's an older virtual analog synthesizer from 2007, around there, and I don't use it much, but this is what this one sounds like. So that's what that sounds like. Now on the track, I do have an auto filter running, and that's what gives it that kind of radio sound that you see and you hear in some of the tracks. Now we'll talk about how we can automate these effects and plugins later. This is part of your mastering and mixing stage, but for now just accept that it's running through that. Now in the TR8 track we've got, let's just stop this for a sec. So in the TR8 track I've got, this is my snare loop. So it's very basic. And then I've also got different ones. That one's without the snare. And I think I've got a stutter, which is using the stutter effect. And you can see there that it followed on to the next clip. And let's just stop it for a sec. if we go to that stutter effect here, you'll see down here it's got this follow action and it goes to the next. It says that arrow down means it's going to the next one here. So that's what that's all about, but we'll get into that in a sec as well. Anyway, so these are some of the sounds. Let's have a look at what we've got over here. Let's stop our track. Now we're going to just have a listen to the SHO1A. The SHO1A is just playing a sequence and it's looped. We've got a couple of different ones. We've got this build one. So you can see the filters kind of opening up on that one as it goes. And what else have we got? This one. It's kind of like a softer one. So I've recorded all of those as clips and I wanted those to play at different parts of the song so that it's not all just sounding the same. There's a bit of movement in the filter and you know that's what that's for. Okay, we also have some interesting sounds from the System 8. So basically the next part of building your track is basically once you've recorded all your clips, you can then rearrange them and you can put them in some sort of kind of way that you can launch these things as scenes. So if you look over on the right hand side under master, you've got you can actually launch that whole row at the same time. So this is what this row sounds like. So basically once you've set up your scenes, then you can actually have like a dry run performance of how you actually want your song to sound. And when it's doing that, you can hit record, and then that's when we go to session view. Once you've recorded everything, it then lays all of those clips out in a sequence like this, and the end result is you've got yourself a song, and then all you have to do is then edit that song. So let's have a listen. Okay, so that is basically, in a nutshell, kind of how I work. Once I've laid everything out in that arrangement view there, I can then edit this, and I can add effects. I can cut and paste. I can move things around, chop it up, and it just gives me a lot more flexibility. And you can keep an eye on how long your track is. You can keep an eye on sections, verses, choruses, reprises, all that sort of stuff. It's all fun and games. So you can, we were talking before, you can see there's effects in some of these tracks, and you can see some of these tracks have like the auto filter. Device on? No, that's not that one. Which one's got the auto filter? Let's see if we can find one. Which one had the auto filter? The Radius did. Okay, there it is there. Alright, sorry, I couldn't find it. So you can see this automation here is just turning that auto filter on and turning it off. So down here it's off. So if we put the playhead over here and we just solo this track, let's listen. You can see here it will start the auto filter when it reaches this point here. Okay, so that's how you automate some of your plugins, and yeah, you'll get a lot better results when you're doing things, in the arrangement view. You can see here, for example, on this track, I've dropped the volume down, and then after that's finished, I've popped it back up again. So let's have a listen to that soloed. And we'll just go just before it. So you can see that's easily done. Once you've done all your little automations, you can then start looking at using third-party plugins. Now, in this particular track here, I've got a harmonizer, which is the H910 from Eventide, and let's just have a listen to what it does to this vocal. Sounds like there's two people singing. Now if we go back to this part here, it's the same vocal with just one person singing. So this is how you can spice up your tracks. You can give them, a little bit more variety by using the same sample. Let's do that again over here just to compare. So there you go. Using VST effects is awesome. This also has let's have a look at this track. This has got quite a lot of effects on it, this track. It has the H910 harmonizer, it's got Eventide stereo room, and it's got Eventide's black hole. So this is an Eventide fest, this particular track. Okay, what else have we got? So I've got kind of audio clips in this particular track here. Let's have a listen. Alright, so let's listen to that as the whole track playing. So you can see that little sequence there, that kind of gave it a bit of movement in that kind of build, and it just separated it out from when it was played earlier. So just adding extra elements in, or taking elements out, or harmonizing vocals instead of not harmonizing them, all those sort of things can change things up. So, you know, we looked at using an auto filter to make it sound like it played through a radio. We looked at harmonizing, using stereo delays, all these kind of effects, fading in, fading out. These are all what you do when you're mixing and you're mastering your track. And it all starts from very basic clip recordings, and you can just build, and this is how you end up with a fully finished track. It takes work, it takes time and energy, and it can be frustrating. But I actually enjoy doing this. I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, but I actually really enjoy the final stages of bringing a track together, because it's kind of like, wow, some of these ideas I had actually were pretty decent, and they can actually sound musical. I don't know how that ever happened, but anyway, I ended up here one day. So yeah, so just to kind of recap, we were talking before about how you've got your tracks that you set up, whether they're audio tracks that you've got from inputs and you've got hardware plugged into them, whether they're sample tracks like a drum rack you've got here. And in this particular drum rack, I've just got a clap and a crash. I don't need anything else because I've actually recorded the TR8 in this track, so they're just a little bit of extra. But I've also got some drum rolls, I've got some crashes and things like that in other tracks, and they will just kind of embellish a boring sequence drum machine. So whenever you listen to, you know, fully mixed production songs, you know, people use drum machines all the time, but they add other elements and other samples and loops to that to change it up. So it's not just a boring 4 on the floor kick and a hi-hat tapping away. You just don't want that. But what we started with was actually a boring 4 on the floor with the hi-hat ticking away. There's nothing wrong with that, but you got to add to it. So when you go to the arranger view and you listen to the track, you'll see, if I click here, and where's the TR8 gone? Yeah, there. So we're just gonna, so you can see there it is there, it's just boring. But when you add everything else in, Now there was just a little trick that I did there. I had two different samples, and basically let's just go back to here again. So this is just the TR8 by itself, so this is nothing exciting, but you'll hear there's the boring 4 on the floor with the hi-hat ticking away. But the next sample, it starts right now. You'll see it start to stutter. Watch. And just that little bit extra. And it's those tiny little subtle things that make the listener go, oh, I like that. That's cool. Or it makes the listener go, oh, that's crap. Whatever. But if you like it, that's the main thing. But yeah, so, add those extra elements in. Now, you'll see here there's the drum rack coming up. So let's just have a look at, we'll just solo the 2 and we'll see how we go. Okay, here we go. So here's the drum rack, adding the clap in. And if I was to take that off, just another element to it. It's not brilliant or anything like that, but I can actually tell you that that clap is actually slightly shuffled off the beat, so it gives a bit of a tiny lag to it. So when you hear the clap, it sounds a bit slack, and you've got that really tight TR8 drum machine beat, but then you've got some slack clapping and the stutter and things like that just mess it up. And I like a little bit of chaos in my music. I like to break rules. So these are some of the mixing and production techniques that you want to kind of look at doing. So no one's asking me any questions yet, which is kind of cool, but it's all right, you don't have to. But if you've got any questions about what I do and what's happening here, please let me know. It's this is what live streams are all about, it's interaction. So please say hi, and yeah. So what else can we show you whilst no one's asking me questions? Let's talk a little bit about once everything is all mixed, how do we get that right, and how do we kind of make sure that our levels are good, and how do we make sure that the EQ on some of the tracks aren't too deep, and how do we do all that? So there's a couple of easy ways, and there's also a couple of tedious ways. And you've probably heard heaps of people talking about using compressors and EQing every single track. You can do that if you want to. There's nothing stopping you. So in our session view here, we've got control over every single track, and you'll notice too that some tracks you'll see the faders are not all the way up. So there's another one there. Some have got this little red dot on the fader, which means that track's volume or fading has been automated. So at this particular point in the song, it's down. But if I move the playhead, you'll see it go up. Okay. So just getting your levels right is really, really important. Now, levels can be tricky because the samples, if you're using samples or recordings, the levels on them might be too quiet, so you might need to increase them, and you can increase them through the sample. You can increase the dB here or decrease it even. But generally speaking, if you can use the level here first to get it right, don't have everything hot. Don't compress everything so that everything's really super loud and in front. You want to kind of relax a bit with all that. And once you've got all of the levels kind of sounding how you like it, and there's generally a rule of thumb with what instruments should be louder and quieter. You don't have to abide by those rules, but they generally do work. So for example, you don't want to have like a super loud hi-hat and it's drowning out everything else, or you might want your kick to sound pretty prominent, but at the same time you don't want to have that kick blowing all the subwoofers in the club. You might need to adjust the EQ on that kick a bit so that it's punchy, but it's not gonna wreck your car stereo, blow the eardrums of your listeners, that sort of stuff. Well, you might want to do that, who knows. But get all that stuff right, and usually you can get it right just by recording it properly, but if you have to fix it, you can fix it in here, and there's heaps of different ways to fix things. So one of the things you've noticed is that I recorded just a single, basically a single master output of the TR8, and a lot of people say, oh, you need to record the kick drums separately and you need to record the hi-hat separately so that you can EQ them and blah blah blah. Well, you do if you need to adjust any of the treatments of that, but you don't if you've got it right. And the other thing too is you can also split this sample up so that your sample is not concentrating on just the whole thing. You can slice it up and have those different elements of the sample playing in different tracks, and then EQ those. The other thing I like to talk about is panning. So panning is done with this panning control here, and I like to give my mixes space. So I like instruments to belong and to own a space. So left to right, somewhere in that stereo spectrum, but also adding some reverb to certain instruments will give that instrument distance or presence if you're playing with different types of reverbs or delay. Even short delays can give something very front presence, or big long taily reverbs can give something a distant sort of sound. So you can have your left to right stereo spectrum, and then you can have your distance. So think about where you want to place all your different elements, and sometimes you don't have to hardly touch it, but I like to put instruments in different places. So you'll hear in this that strike fet is over on the right, so it fills that spectrum. And I like to use ping pong delays so you can hear those sequences popping left to right. They're always filling out the spectrum as well. So, definitely use panning, definitely use reverb to create that separation. Okay, so you've got your panning, you've got your volume, you've got your levels, you've got EQ, you've done all that. Now the master. Everything's all sandwiched together in the left and right stereo track. How do we get that sounding right? This is a $1 million question, really, and I'll be honest, nobody other than the absolute genius gurus that work in professional recording studios can actually say that they've got the secret to this. In fact, every single song that I work on, I find that I have to adjust the mastering tweaks here and there. It might be a similar principle that I master with, but it's always tweaking and adjusting until I get it right. So one kind of, not a cheap way, but one kind of cool way you could do mastering is iZotope make this thing called Ozone. So let's have a look at that. I haven't used it in this, but let's just bring it up. So I haven't got the latest Ozone, but let's just bring this one up anyway so we can have a look at it. Now, one of the cool things about Ozone is that it has mastering presets, and so you can select from genre specific mastering. So if you're working in any of these genres, right? Or you can just choose all purpose mastering, and it might be you just might want to brighten the overall mix. So let's choose that. And then you get this really cool interface here. Now this can be pretty much, this could be a complete video times 1,000 just on its own to talk about this, but quick and dirty way of mastering. This gets a lot of things right. And the presets are pretty good. So this brighten overall mix, let's have a listen. What is it doing to my track? So it's kind of not doing much because my mix is pretty good. But just to show you what it's doing here, you've got an equalizer. Then you've got this dynamic EQ, which is kind of like an equalizer that self-adjusts. And I love this one, the imager. And the imager will show you how your track looks on the stereo spectrum. So let's keep playing. So my track isn't like massively spread, which is probably a good thing because you don't want it too spread out. It's kind of sitting in that V. See how there's got the V there? So that's okay. And it does pop out of the V a bit, but that's a pretty good image there. And then this maximizer, which is kind of like a limiter, I find, compressor limiter. There's a lot of information online about this, and there's settings in here which will help you, achieve a better compression output at better levels. So they're the 4 little plugins in this particular thing that you can do. But there's other modules that you can use. Exciter and dynamics and post equalizer and vintage limiter. There's all sorts of stuff you can play with if you want to, and this might be the tool for you. So this is Ozone 7. I think the Ozone 8 is out now, so it's not a huge amount of difference, but they've added a few extra bells and whistles. That might be a good start for you to do your mastering with, so try that. But it does cost money. I'm just turning it off for now. The probably the basic way to master would be to go into audio effects and drop an EQ in here. So we use an EQ8 and we'll just drop that in here like that. And then you play your track and you look at your spectrum. So you can see with my track, it's kind of heavier in terms of amplitude. It's heavier at the lower notes, and it's quieter with the higher notes. It's generally the way I like to do things. I like my basses to be heavy and loud, and my kicks to be loud. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the way you should do it. You might play in an orchestra, that would be completely different. You might need the violins and the mid-range instruments to be the loudest. This is all subjective. But once you've got your EQ, you can adjust. Remember, this is your master track. We're not adjusting individual tracks here. This is like the kind of the final touch. So you could pump up frequencies, drop down frequencies as you need them. And there's a few settings here. You've got filter modes, and you've got these numbers across here, and this is where you can actually pump things up or drop things down as you need them. So say we thought we might have needed a little bit more on the higher stuff. Let's just bring the higher stuff up and let's see what it does. Now turn it off. Yeah, it's really spiced up that higher end. So you might find that that's all you needed to do. Just a little bit of EQ and you're good to go. But the other thing you need to check on is your final levels. Okay, and you can see that with your, there's a little level meter here. So check on your final levels. So Ableton will give you hints. So see how I've hovered the mouse over this number here, and in the bottom left hand corner over here it tells me what that's for. Okay, so that's a little peak level thing, and as the track plays all the way through, it'll tell you what the maximum peak level your track has got to. When you start using compression and stuff like that, you know, you're going to end up having pretty high peak levels, like close to 0 dB. I like to be anything between -6 to -3, just because if I do need to beef up the track once more in post-production, I can. I don't like my tracks to be super loud. I like them to be a bit more dynamic. So if you ever look at a waveform of a track, say you go to SoundCloud and look at people's tracks, some people's tracks look like bricks, just solid boom. And other people's tracks have more dynamics in them. So usually that brick looking track is kind of like an indication that they've just gone crazy with compression. It doesn't always mean that, but it usually does. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of dynamics, and compression definitely has its uses, and I use it, but I don't use it on the master very much. I use it on individual tracks, and you know, I use an analog phaser pedal, for example, and I need to put a compressor on that because it can be pretty harsh because it's phasing sound through a lot of spectrum, and you don't want it to peak when it's very resonant. So compressors are handy for taming things, not necessarily what a lot of people are using it for. They're using it more for building that that pseudo loudness in their tracks. But anyway, it's up to you. So yeah, so how long have we been going for? Good 43 minutes. And nobody's got any questions so far. Don't know if the chat's not working or something. I think that's probably about all we need to talk about, unless I've got some questions from you guys, even just to say hi. Just having a look at the stream here, and yeah, this is my first real proper live stream. I've done a few tests, but this is the first one I've gone for quite a long time. I don't even know how it's going to turn out. So 45 minutes of live streaming, and it could have been a complete and utter train wreck. So we'll see how we go. So probably what I'll do is, if nobody's... Oh, we got someone saying hi. Hey, Eric. How you going? I'll just reply here. So it's nice to see you. Yeah. Got any questions? Please chuck a question in the chat. If you want me to show you something on here, I'm more than happy to show you. So if you're wondering, this particular track that I'm showing you here is called Axial, and it's a finished track that I've done, and I published it about a month ago. It's on SoundCloud at the moment. It's not commercial yet. I feel it probably needs a little bit more of an edit, but it's good enough, you know, I think, to go on SoundCloud, that's for sure. It's got a kind of ambient, down-tempo, chill-out sort of vibe to it with a bit of a house. I kind of like to mix genres, and it's a bit daring. Some people get annoyed by it, but I like to do it. Like, it's got a housey kind of vibe to it, but at the same time it's ambient and it's dreamy. So, I don't know, that sort of stuff is kind of, I find it cool. So, yeah, Eric, tell us what you're up to. Yeah. This is kind of cool, talking to someone on the other side of the world. What have we got here? We've got some, like, that's a fully finished session there of all of the clips worked in the end. You know, that's kind of how it looks. It looks a little bit crazy and a bit messy, but you know, that's what finished tracks look like. And once they're all edited, they're going to sound the way you want them to sound. So I don't know if this has been helpful or not, but anyway, I thought it would be a bit of an insight on what I do, and I don't usually go into, you know, my commercial or potential commercial stuff, but I thought it's worth showing because I don't classify myself as an expert in any way. I'm just like everyone else, just making music just for the love of it. And when I get kind of crazy with a song, I tend to take it all the way to the end. And it's actually a good feeling when you finish something. I've got a lot of tracks that I've started. I'm sure we all have. But actually finishing one is actually good. And I don't always follow the rules, you know, chorus, verse, all that sort of stuff. I generally don't like to follow those rules. I like to follow a more fluid approach. You know, who cares what people think? If your approach doesn't get played on mainstream radio, so what? You know, how many tracks do we listen to on mainstream radio that we actually like? It's really, sometimes you listen to stuff on the radio and you think, how the hell did that stuff get up there? It's you know, it's shocking. But anyway, commercial radio, you know, your music is coming from your heart, from your soul, so it should be something that is an extension of what you believe. It could be a story that you're trying to tell, it could be a message, it could be political, it could be love, anything like that. I don't know, for me, I find a lot of the music that I do is kind of soundscapey. So, you know, soundscapey means it could lend itself to be something in a movie or a game, not necessarily commercial radio. So that's kind of where I go. I kind of sit on that fence. Yeah. So yeah, that's cool, Eric. No problem at all. You don't have to write. It's fine. I don't speak very good French. I'm sorry. You know, my French is basic. I learned French at school, and that was many years ago. So yeah, you know, we would have the same problem in reverse. So I'd be trying to speak to you in French, and it would just be laughable. But anyway, a big hello all the way from down here in Australia to you in France. So, yeah. Maybe we could talk a little bit about, I don't know when you came into the live stream, if you came in a little bit later on, but we could definitely talk about me recording hardware. I'm predominantly a hardware kind of recording guy. I do record it and then use it as a sample, so then I'm playing with samples as such, but my ideas come from hardware. So I go and sit down with, say it's one of these. I'll go down and sit with that and play with it until I get the sounds that I want, and then I'll record them. And that's what builds the song up. Sometimes I use something like a MPC Live as like a platform to record into and sequence and lay down tracks and things like that. So if you know my channel, you know I've done a lot of MPC videos. You'll see how I work with that. But everything ends up here in Ableton in the end. If it's a song that I want to go all the way to the end with, it's done in Ableton. Yeah, electrons are cool. I mean, there's the Analog 4, as you just saw, and over there a bit further back is the Octatrack, which I've only had for a couple of months. I'm in love with that thing. It's really, really cool. So, but complete beginner when it comes to the Octatrack. It's something that I really am keen to master, actually. So maybe in the next few months I might start doing some videos on the Octatrack. No, I don't have the rhythm. How do they say it? The rhythm. I don't have that. No. I've got a fair few other drum machines, so I didn't feel that I needed it. But I do think it's super cool. It's definitely a cool bit of kit. So if you've got it, then you're doing well. Yeah, rhythm. Yeah. I still like the TR8. I mean, I know it's digital, but it doesn't sound digital to me. I use a lot of sampled drums as well, and I use the MPC for that. So, oh my God, if I had the money, I'd probably fill my studio with every drum machine in the world. I love them. They're so cool, but I have to, feed myself and put fuel in my car. There's limits. I probably would love to have a rhythm and there's a few others, like there's a DSI Tempest that I wouldn't mind getting my hands on. That thing's pretty deep as well, even though it's quite old now. I still dig it. The most recent drum machine that I bought was the Drum Brute from Arturia, and because it's pure analog, that thing is just a sample abyss. Like, you can just sample that thing crazy. I mean, directly out of the outputs, that thing is as raw as anything, but if you start adding guitar effect pedals to some of those outputs, that thing can sound super, super unique. And one of the things that I've been loving about the Drum Brute is how it's got all the individual outputs on it, and you can map those to different channels in your mixer and send them off to different effects, and you can have that thing sounding really, really, really unique. And anyone who touches one of those and starts playing with it like that will have a unique sound, because they're going to put their flavor to it. So I've found that the Drum Brute is actually pretty good. A lot of people don't like it because it probably isn't perfect out of the box, out of the main output. And but that's like anything. That's like buying a guitar. If you're just playing an electric guitar, it can sound pretty boring after a while. It's when you start adding the effects pedals and changing it up, that's when it gets interesting. So yeah, I tend to sample drums a lot, and then, as you can see in Ableton, I slice it up and I add my elements that way. So that's kind of what I do. I think I've got a lot more to learn when it comes to drums. I'm not a drummer. I'm pretty hopeless at it. I mean, even this track here, it's pretty basic from drum point of view. I've done other tracks where I've spent more time on the drums, and I think they kind of work out better in the end when you do. But I think my golden rule is with drums is to make sure that you are changing it up through the track, so the track evolves, and that way that the listener's not just listening to that same drum beat all the way through. You're changing it up. You've got light and shade. You've got difference. So yeah, it doesn't really matter what drum machine you use or what drums you use, even samples, as long as they fit the music and the style that you're doing. So we all have different loves. But yeah, speaking of drum machines, one that I've had for many years is the Electro ER1. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's an old one, but I've had that thing for many years, and it's still here and it's still going strong. And it's digital. It's made by Korg, but that thing it's just super cool fun to do. And also now with the Octatrack I've got and the MPC Live, I've actually really enjoyed sampling that, and you've got a lot of soundcraft capabilities even on that old bit of gear. So soundcrafting your drum sounds and then sampling it and then mangling those samples up, reversing them, pitching them high, pitching them low, putting effects on them. It's good fun, absolutely. I don't know, Eric, do you put your drums down first, or do you find a melody first? What's just a single word answer? What's the first thing that you usually do when you're writing music? Is it melody, drums, bass, or is it a variation? Depends on the mood you're in. For me, I kind of don't start with drums. No, see, I'm the opposite. I don't start with drums. I kind of start with... I don't even start with the melody. I kind of start with sounds. And bass could be that sound for me. So I do like my bass sounds. Absolutely. This is going to sound funny, but one of my favourite synths is my bass station 2. I absolutely love that synth. I've had it for years, probably about 5 years now, and that synth is, and that just recently had a massive firmware update where they added paraphonic mode to it, which is super cool that they would do that. That synth is so cool. It's a mono synth, yeah, but that they have a sound. They have, do you know what I mean? Like, they have a uniqueness. Yeah. And I mean, this is why I bought the Peak. That's actually the only reason why I bought the Peak, was because I thought Novation have made a polyphonic version of the bass station. It's got to be good. And boy, was I right with that. It's so good. So now I've got the bass station 2 and the Peak. They're just a great pair, and I do find myself using them quite a lot. In fact, it was used in this track. Well, not the bass station wasn't, but the Peak was. So a bit different to you. You're saying that you use the beat first, and then you're probably adding melody and then bass next. I'm probably more a sound guy. I kind of look for a sound, whether it's in this particular track, this sound kind of was where it started for me. I was playing with the SH-01, and this is the sound that it started with. So that was just kind of saying to me, you've got to do something with that. That sounds cool. You know, some musicians will think, oh, that's a nice little thing that I can chuck in the corner of a song somewhere. But for me, that needed to kind of have the whole song built around it. It was kind of talking to me in a way that, you know, I loved the movement in that. It was kind of the filtering open and closing, and it was just getting light and dark, and yeah, it really needed. So, you know, I did a video a little while back where I was showing people how you can use what do you call it, the Eurorack modules that Roland made, and you can plug them into the Roland MX1 mixer, and then it gives you an extra 2 audio inputs. So because people complained that the MX1 didn't have enough analog audio inputs, so I was showing how you could do that. And as I was showing that, I was doing this little jam as part of the video, and that's basically the birth of where this song came from, just a jam, and it's where that sequence came from. I was using that sequence out of an SH01, and I think I was using an OP1 to do that sort of, that deep growly bass thing that's in this. What is it? It's this, isn't it? I think this is the growly bass. Yeah, that. And in the end, I ended up not using the OP1. I ended up using the System 8, and I kind of don't know why, but I just felt that it evolved into the System 8. So, yeah, it's kind of, there's no rules, you know. Just have that organic approach. Just lay down your sounds, and then they kind of, in my mind, it kind of all fits as clips, and then you've got this kind of crazy mess of clips sitting there in your session view here, and then you can just arrange them, and eventually a song kind of appears out of that. And I kind of like that way of working because it's not forceful, it's more organic. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not forced to put things in boxes. You're not forced to, you know, to fit everything with a structure. You're kind of more organic. You're letting things be more fluid. What do I think of Roland Cloud plugins? I love them. I think they're awesome. The only negative thing I'll say about them is they tend to chew up CPU. So the guys at Roland have either got some immense amount of code in there which just completely chews up your CPU, or they're actually terrible coders. I don't know which one's which. I come from a computer background, so I'm kind of more interested in that. But if they're kind of using like you know how they brought out the Air stuff, and it's kind of all based on FPGA algorithms which are supposed to emulate analog circuits. So if they've done that in a way where they've actually had to put an emulator inside their VSTs, which then takes the same code as such as what the hardware has, that might explain why there's a bit of CPU usage, because it sounds to me like there might be a bit of extra stuff going on in the background. But it sounds really good. I mean, gosh, the the 808 one they released recently as a VST, the 303 they released as a VST just the other day. You know, in the mix, you are not going to notice it. Oh, the D50, yeah, the D50 is perfect. Like, you know, apart from the DA that sits in the actual old D50 that it originally came in, the DA being the digital to analog chip that converts, you know, digital sounds to analog audio. Apart from that, it's perfect. Everything is absolutely spot on. I've got a D550, which is the rack mount version of the D50 here. and I used it in a song I did recently called Retro, and I love some of the factory sounds on that thing. I didn't use even though I've got the cloud subscription, I didn't use the plugin for it because I really wanted to. I think it was probably more for nostalgia reasons, but I really wanted to actually use the old hardware. But there definitely is just a very subtle difference, and that's that digital analog converter that I was talking about that you'll get. But that's old technology, so some people like the old, some people don't like it. It's a bit like the argument with the Juno chorus, the hiss sound on that. Some people love the hiss sound. I can't stand it. I remember having a Juno years ago, and I used to turn the chorus off because the hiss was terrible, and it actually got worse as a lot of the Junos' hiss got worse as they got older. So when Roland brought out, the JU06 Boutique, and then eventually they brought out the Juno 106 plug out for the System 8, which I've got. They actually included the hiss, and I'm like, oh no! But luckily they've allowed you to turn it off, which is, thank God for that. So yeah, I love my Roland stuff. It's they've got some really good gear. So yeah, I don't know. There's someone else sitting there in the background watching, so if you're more than happy to jump in and pop a comment on, you can talk about what I've been talking about in the stream. It's the basic. If you're wondering what it is, it's basically the way I kind of work when I'm making a track from start to finish, and it's my workflow, and let's call it the chaos workflow because it works for me, and I'm quite chaotic about music. Is the D50 Boutique and the D50 Cloud, are they the same? Yeah, I think they're the same. Yeah. I don't have the D50 Boutique, or D05 I think they call it, don't they? I don't have it, but I've gone to music shops and played with it for I think a couple of hours at one time I went there, because I really wanted to know whether it was worth me getting, because I don't know how long my D550 is going to last. It's got one of those LCD displays on it, and it's starting to it's starting to fade on it. I'm not sure if it's the backlight or whatever, but it's these are old things, they require maintenance. I mean, I can fix that, but one of the things I was interested with it is you can use it as a programmer or a control surface, because the D550 doesn't have the joystick and a few of the other features. So with the MIDI out and MIDI into the D05, MIDI out, MIDI in into the D550, you can actually use it to control the old hardware, which is incredible. And I was that close to getting one just because of that. But then when Roland brought out the D50 in the cloud, you can do the same thing. So you can just MIDI out from your audio interface into and you can do it through software. So it wasn't needed. But yeah, they sound the same. Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, I think there's been some videos out there where people have tried to prove that they haven't, but yeah. Seriously, like when you've got 12 tracks, 18 tracks, whatever you've got in your music, and you've got let's say you've got a Roland TB03 Boutique, right? In there, nobody would be able to tell if that was a TB303 or a TB03. Seriously, they would not be able to tell. Like, yeah, raw and synth against synth, yeah, you can tell, but in the mix you can't. And I think that's the really big point, is that people need to understand that it's at the end of the day it's going to be in the mix. So you can get the thing to sound 99% the same. It's fine. D50 Boutique versus D50 Cloud. I think exactly the same. I think. What about you? Have you listened to both? I think they sound exactly the same. I don't think there's any difference at all. Be careful though with that, because when you're listening to your Roland Cloud, you're listening to it through your audio interface. And I don't know if you've ever tried this, but if you've got different audio interfaces, sometimes things can sound different coming out of your PC or your Mac. Yeah, the dynamic could be more impressive. Yeah, I think it comes back to that digital to analog converter circuit though on the old hardware. Roland, when they build their hardware synths, I know this for a fact because someone at Roland told me this. They always put a bit of a boost on the low end, and they've done that. And they did it in the D50. They did it in the Jupiters. They still do it today. So here's a really good proof example. TC Electronic have just released a video of their new Juno chorus pedal that they've done, right? And that chorus pedal is an exact copy, apparently, of the Juno chorus circuit. And go listen to that video, because you'll hear the missing bottom end sound that the Juno synths had. And like everyone's commenting on that, it's missing EQ, it's lacking dynamics, and exactly what you said, dynamics. And that's because Roland do put something in their master output that beefs up that bottom end, and it beefs a bit of the EQ. I don't think they, I don't think they kind of have a full-on EQ circuit in there, but it's definitely some sort of low end or maybe a filter that boosts it slightly. I don't know. Someone who knows more about Roland will be able to tell you. Oh no, that pedal was going once. I mean, so TC Electronic, we're demoing it, and they haven't actually officially released it yet. And there was so many comments about how they hadn't quite got the sound right, and it wasn't because they didn't get the chorus part right. You know how the chorus effect has that kind of that second kind of copy that phases between each other. That they got that right, but what they didn't get right was the dynamics, and the bottom end was missing. And I think in the Juno there's a slight delay effect that's built into that chorus as well, and I think they missed that. So there was quite a lot of people that were commenting that they hadn't quite got all that, and that kind of stuff is pretty important, because you're trying to recreate something that is supposed to be, like the original. And I think what they wanted to do is you've got the DeepMind 12, which was modelled after the Juno 106. So imagine the DeepMind 12 plus that analog chorus pedal through TC Electronic, which is the same company now. If they get it right, you've got yourself a Juno. There's no holding back. The analog circuits of that DeepMind 12 is at heart a Juno. You can actually get those Juno sounds out of it. People have proven it. So I've got a Boss MD500 pedal here, which has got the Dimension chorus circuits on it. Now it's not a Juno. It's not a Juno circuit, because I think that's Dimension D, but these would be Dimension 1, 2, 3, and 4, which would be Dimension C and whatever the others were. But geez, that sounds like, if I've got the DeepMind 12 playing like a Juno sort of patch and going through that pedal, it sounds like a Juno, and with this new TC Electronic pedal coming out, it's going to sound exactly like a Juno. Hopefully they don't put the hiss in it. We don't want the hiss. Nobody wants the hiss. You people that want hiss, you can go and have a hiss party somewhere. But yeah. So, who else is here to say hi? Jump in the chat. We're talking about kind of random stuff now, but yeah. I haven't heard that the Dreadbox Hypnosis pedal. No. I actually probably should go and check that out on YouTube. I haven't heard that one. Yeah. I've got a friend here that has ordered one, and I don't think he's got it yet, but he's like a Dreadbox fanatic. He's got the Erebus and the, what was their second one? The Abyss was their second one that they made. Yeah, this guy, he's complete Dreadbox fanatic. One of the things that I like about Dreadbox is they purposely build their hardware to be a little bit unpredictable. Yeah, Abyss, that's right. So that unpredictability in the hardware, where you've got things that kind of happen as happy accidents. You know, you don't want to have everything crisp and perfect all the time. That's what a musical instrument's about. It's about being able to manipulate it and trying to make it unique. They really are quite musical, the way that they're designing their electronics. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, I'll definitely go check out the video for sure, definitely. They've got some really impressive effects built into their synths too. So is it the Erebus has got the analog delay in it? I think it's the Erebus that's got the analog delay in it. I'm not going to jump on YouTube right now and find out. But one of their earlier synths that they brought out a year or two ago, it's got analog effects in it, and that was actually quite impressive what they did. So, and they do make, yeah. I think it was a bucket brigade delay. I do, yeah. The guy that you see on all the Erebus videos at NAMM and stuff like that, he was talking about it when the Erebus was originally released. So if you go hunt down one of those early videos, you'll find him talking about it. They did something to that delay circuit that was a little bit more unique. So it wasn't kind of like the Moog Foga, bucket brigade delay, or the old, tape machine type BBDs. It was kind of, there was something else about it. I think it was something to do with the feedback. Yeah, that thing gets crazy. So I wouldn't mind getting my hands on some of their gear too, but I've got too much stuff as it already. I won't ever make any music. It'll just be continuously learning new things. I mean, the Octatrack has been here for a couple of months now, and yeah, it's a learning curve. I mean, I'm going from MPC to Octatrack. I mean, I've had this Electron Analog 4 for years, so I do know their workflow. But the Octatrack itself is kind of, it's a different way of sampling. Like they've got flex machines, which means the samples are stored in the memory, and then they've got streams, which the samples are stored off the compact flash card, and then you kind of got to plan ahead about which one you're going to use, and yeah. And then the way that the parameter lock works, and you kind of, once you get yourself around all of that, it actually works pretty good. But one of the reasons why I got it was because you can do kind of this live looping / resampling, and I think it's still the only thing out there that does it, and it does it really well. So what I intend to do with it is, I've got my MPC and I've got my Octatrack, they're next to each other, and I'm actually going to resample the master output of the MPC in the Octatrack. With them both next to each other, it gives me 16 audio tracks and 16 MIDI tracks, which is massive. With those two combined, that's massive. I mean, I don't know if I need that, but I can resample on the fly live as a performance, which is so super cool. And I still haven't worked out how to properly do that yet, but I guarantee you, as soon as I work it out, there'll be a video on it. 16, yeah. I think one of them's 24. I think the MPC might be 24. I don't know. I need to check. But they're both definitely 16. Yeah. Yep. With the Octatrack, you can either record in mono or in stereo, and same with the MPC. So, if you're worried about sample sizes and things like that, it's not a problem. It really isn't. If you're going to be, recording like a 5-minute sample or something like that, yeah, they tend to be issues, but I don't usually do that sort of stuff, so it doesn't worry me. If you're going to do that, I'd get myself a Roland SP404 and just have that to do those big long samples, because that's what that thing's built for, streaming straight off the SD card. MPC Live. This one. MPC Live. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. In so many ways, that thing. It's deeper than anything I've seen. Like I used to have an MPC 1000 before. I sold it. Didn't need it. This thing can do everything that did, plus more. I mean, there's a few things that the software did on the MPC 1000 that the new one doesn't, but I never used it, so I don't care. But the fact that it's got a battery in it, and the battery is kind of like kind of similar to a laptop battery, you can just put that thing on your lap and catch a train, catch a bus, catch a plane, and you can just work on that thing as a standalone. It is so cool. I've travelled with it and it's been fine. So if you treat it the same as you treat your laptop, that's fine. I use this deck saver, this little Perspex lid thing. So that stays on top of it when it's put inside my bag. It protects all the knobs and that. I just put a couple of elastic bands around it to keep it tied on. But yeah, when I'm traveling, that thing is super cool. The battery lasts for ages. Like, I think I was using it for about 7 hours and it was starting to get low, and I just forgot. I mean, I could have plugged it in. That's yeah. They do save your gear. I once spilled a drink on something and it had a deck saver on top of it, so it wasn't an issue. But gosh, we shouldn't be having these things lying around. That's empty, by the way. But yeah, nice to talk about gear. Hello to the other couple of people that are here. Please jump into the chat and say hi. We were talking about, just so those who have just jumped in asking, we were talking about Ableton and how we work, producing a finished song from sort of start to finish, how we were doing that, and laying down tracks and laying down clips, and then using scenes and that sort of stuff. We went quite deep into it. We're going for about an hour and 25 minutes almost now, so it's a pretty long stream, but I'm happy to keep going if you guys have got questions. So I might do some more of these. I think these are quite fun. Yeah, I'm not sure what the quality is coming out like from Australia. I don't know if you guys know, Australia's got pretty bad internet connection down here. So, hi Ian, how you going? Yes, we have. I have announced well, I have notified the winner. So yeah, so he's got back to me, and he's super excited. As you know, that the draw was earlier this morning, and it was done via a random, entry selection thing. But yeah, I mean, the guy that's got it, he's got this amazing story. We would have had no idea just from his entry. I can't reveal his name yet because he hasn't told me whether he's happy for me to tell me, broadcast it publicly. But he had this amazing story, and the story wasn't known to me. Remember, I said that the draw was all completely random, but this came out after I contacted him via email, and he told me that he's going through, some crazy stuff in his life, and it couldn't have gone to a better person. If you trust me, I'm telling you that it's gone to someone that is going to be using music to heal themselves from what they've been going through in life, and no more deserving than this guy. And yeah, it was just pure coincidence and luck that he got it. But yeah, Ian, so sorry that you didn't get it, but don't worry, I'm going to be doing more. So, make sure you stick around, because there's definitely more stuff coming on. I really hope that some of the manufacturers contact me and, put some gear my way. I'm hoping that Presonus, who make mixers and audio interfaces, are going to give me something. They've been pretty good to me. So there's a pretty good chance that I might get something from Presonus next, but we'll see. No promises, but I think that's going to happen next. Also, I've got a pretty good relationship with Roland too in Australia, so we'll see what happens with them. They might be able to do something for me as well. So yeah, definitely don't worry, there'll be more. I don't know if it'll be another Arturia key step though. So I think I'm pretty much key stepped out. I mean, I don't know if you guys know my channel. I've done a fair bit of stuff on the key step. It's almost like, I've got some secret love affair with this thing. But yeah, it's pretty cool bit of gear. But I just thought it was something nice to give to you guys. It's a small channel, 2,500 subs at the time. I thought it was, nice to say thanks and give something back. But yeah, that's what it's all about. So Ian, what do you do? Are you a musician? Do you produce? Do you DJ? Are you in a band? Tell me a little bit about your story. Yeah, anyone else who's lurking in the background there? What software? This one here on the screen is Ableton. You've got no idea. This is Ableton Live. So this version is the old one. This is version 9. Yeah, so I don't have version 10 yet. I'm still waiting for Ableton to discount it. Unless they want to give it to me for free, which they don't. Yeah, it's like $400 and something to upgrade. It's crazy how expensive this stuff is. So I have to wait. I don't have that sort of money to throw around. Mate, if you're trying to get grips with the beat, join the club. We all are. even the people that have been doing it for years. What does it do? It's a digital audio workstation. So you have tracks, and you can record different instruments in your tracks, and it also has an arranger, which is this view here, which is like a timeline. So then you can lay out your sounds and samples in a chronological or linear timeline. So yeah, earlier in the stream I went through all of this, so there will be a copy of the stream put up on YouTube, no doubt, afterwards. So you'll be able to go back and have a look at that. I think you can even, if you want, you can even scrub back up to 4 hours whilst the live stream's going. So you could probably go back and watch it anyway. But yeah, so that is all to do with recording and mixing and mastering, you know. So I use this all the time, and I use it with a bit of hardware called a push, which is like a MIDI controller, and it basically helps me, so I don't have to keep my hand on my mouse and use the mouse all the time. It helps me press buttons while I've got hardware plugged in and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it, you know, there's samples in here. So here's a drum sample. And you can see down the bottom here, you've got a kick and a hi-hat. So let's have a little play. There you go, you can listen to that. There we go. It's pretty basic, that particular drum beat. Anyway, if you're wondering, that's actually recorded from a Roland TR8. So that's where that's from, which is an 808 clone. But yeah, that's a sample, and you can see here it's in a loop. So that will just keep looping around until I press stop. So, you know, there's a version of it without the snare. So there's no snare in that. And there's a version with the snare. So, you know, it's this stuff's all pretty cool. If you can, Ian, get yourself a copy of it. There's versions of this, you know, called Ableton Lite, and you can record up to 8 tracks on Ableton Lite, which is plenty. And Ableton Lite is pretty much freely available. So, you know, if you got yourself a MIDI controller from Arturia or something like that, they come with Ableton Lite. Yes, I do. I do layer my tracks. Ian, I'll show you that in a sec. Eric, what is the best emulation of the TR-808? If I'm being completely honest, the TR-808, nothing is better than the original. The way they built that thing originally was very unique. The circuits that they used, the capacitors, everything about it, it's like it's a musical instrument. In terms of emulation, I think Behringer might actually have come pretty close. I haven't actually seen one in real life yet, but I think they might have come pretty close to it. So who knows? I need to get one before I'm going to make my final decision on it. I'd love to know what it's like next to a real TR-808, and I'd also want to know what it's like next to some of these Roland remake digital versions like the TR-8 or the TR-8S or the boutique TR-08. I don't know about the cloud version. I kind of feel it's kind of samply. I don't know. There's just something about it. I don't like the interface on a computer. It's weird. That interface needs to be tactile. It needs to, you know, something that you need to hold. Yeah. So Ian, you were asking about layering. So if you look at, this is my arranger view, which I was talking about before, you'll see that there's things that are layered in here. So for example, if I look at this vocal track here, track 12, which has got little vocal what do you call them? I don't even know how to say it. Vocal things. You'll see that there's actually 3 layered effects, and they are chained so that one effect goes into the next, which then goes into the next. So there's layers in there. And then when you're looking at all your tracks, they are all layered to form a master track. So they all, they all form that master track. I'll give you an example of these vocals. Let's go to here. Okay, and we need to unmute something, sorry. There we go. So you can see in how it's layered, all the multiple tracks on all the effects, it all layers together for you. So that's what these things do. It helps you, it helps you lay down your ideas, and that's exactly what this video has been about tonight, is to help you understand how I do it. I mean, I do it in a chaotic way, but I think most of us think chaotically anyway. Hello to all the new people that have just joined. So, this is the session view, and the session view is the way that you look at your tracks, and this is the arranger view. This is what I was saying before. This is the way that you look at your timeline. In terms of drums, yeah, I kind of... in terms of finger drumming in pads, is that what you mean? I do it a bit. I didn't do it in this particular track, but you can. Yeah, there's various devices out there. I mean, even the Ableton Push that I've got sitting right here, you can't see, but it's literally right there. You can finger drum on that. You can set up a drum track, or drum rack they call it in Ableton. So this is a drum rack here, and you can see down the bottom, these are your pads. I've only got two in this particular one, which is a clap and a crash. So if I go to notes, I can, okay, just letting you know my hands are away from the mouse and going down to the Ableton Push. I'm just hitting pads. So yeah, get yourself a push. Or get yourself a MIDI controller, like a Novation launch control or something like that, which has got pads on it. So they're pretty cool. You don't actually necessarily need to have hardware. You could just do everything in your computer if you wanted to, for sure. So, I mean, in terms of beginning with this video, probably wasn't aimed at an absolute beginner, but you'll definitely pick some stuff up from here. Maybe I can do a beginner video. It'll be something that I won't do live though. So yeah, hi to everyone else that's just joined. Please jump into the chat and say hi. We're talking about producing music in Ableton and kind of how we go about doing it. What's the chaotic method that we use? We've also been going off on massive tangents and talking about gear, of course, which is what we love to do. So, yeah. A tutorial on beats. Well, yeah, I could. I'm not very good at beats. I'm not a beat maker. I can help you with sequencing, though. But I'm not a drummer. I do have rhythm in me, so I understand keeping a beat, keeping a rhythm. I think I've got a lot to learn when it comes to drums. I think there's a lot that I do wrong, and there's a lot that I could be doing. I know when I make songs, I can be a bit lazy with drums, to be honest. I remember making a few songs where I spent ages programming the drums, and it sounded amazing, and people commented on how good the drums are, but God, it's a lot of work. So in some of these tracks I get pretty lazy programming drums. So I don't know, Ian, if I'm the best role model for you. But yeah, I mean, from a beginner point of view, I could definitely probably help. Like in this particular song, I use a TR-8, which is made by Roland. It's a drum machine. So it was really easy. You just you sequence your drum sounds on a beat, and then it just loops. And then you can just let that play in the background, and then you can add your other instruments as you go. And you can do that inside Ableton, of course, as well with this drum. With the drum rack, you can sequence the drum rack itself. So you can have that all sequenced and playing back automatically and looped. So it's all pretty easy. It's all included in there. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think we might wrap it up. What do you think, guys? I think we're probably getting a bit long in the tooth here. And I've really enjoyed this little live stream and chatting to you guys anyway. So it was really nice of you all to join. And please, if you haven't, definitely hit the subscribe button on my channel. It's always good to know that you guys are around. I definitely want to do some more of these, and let me know if it's worth my time doing these. And in the comments, let me know if you've got anything that you would like me to talk about in these live chats. There can be a real Q&A happening in this, and it's really something that's worthwhile, where we can interact live, and I can show you things. Maybe the next time I do a live stream, I might have some more cameras set up on some of the hardware, and I can show you how that can be recorded, and how I sort of work that way, how I get these recordings like that into the computer. So anyway, I'm gonna hit the road as well, and I wish you all an awesome weekend, what's left of it, and we'll hope to see you all soon. And thanks so much for watching. Big thumbs up to you guys, and we'll catch you later.